welcome to Web of Stories. It's Tuesday, which of course means Tag Tuesday. And last week I was tagged in this tag by Erin at Erin Go Live. This is the Get to Know My Past tag. It was created by, I've got my laptop up here, Joan's Pointed Plate, which I will link to the channel below. I will also link to Erin's video. So this is not a very bookish tag. It's just sort of a get to know me sort of tag. And I thought that would be a lot of fun to do. So let's get started. There are 10 questions and they're all kind of about my past. The first question, did anyone either related or not live with you when you were a child? Obviously my parents. One of my older brothers, I'm gonna step aside for a sec because I will be referring to my brothers. I have 5 older brothers. One is deceased, so I have four living older brothers. They are much older than I am. The youngest one is 14 years older, and the oldest one is almost 21 years older, so they're quite a bit older than I am. But one of my brothers did come back to live with us for a while when he kind of was in a rocky point in his life. But as far as people who were not related, I do remember 2. One was when I was a junior in high school, we had an exchange student for a while. She was from the Netherlands. It was not a positive experience for our family. And I think part of that was just the service that we used, like the student exchange service that did it. It wasn't like AFS, which was the big one, that I think did a better job of selecting candidates and pairing families and preparing families. I think that was part of the problem, that we were not adequately prepared, and maybe this particular student, this was probably not a great idea for her, but it lasted a few months, and then we asked her to find another place. We asked the service to find her another place. Also, when I was, and I'm trying to think, I was either a senior in high school or it was like during a summer when I was back in college. My mom had a friend from graduate school who had been teaching in Korea, teaching English in Korea, and came back and was kind of like between places to live, and she lived with us. I know it was a very difficult time for my mother. I personally don't remember it being that difficult because I was pretty much out and about a lot. But I remember her being there. We got along fine. That was just for a couple of months. But yeah, other than that, it was just like maybe a sibling here and there. So the second question is, do your family members live close to you? So I currently live about an hour's drive away from my hometown, which is Salem, Oregon. My 2 youngest older brothers and their children who have families, they all still live down in Salem. So I see them, somewhat frequently. And then my 2 older brothers, one lives in the Midwest and one lives on the East Coast, but summers in the Midwest. He has a place on a lake. I'll talk more about Minnesota lakes in a moment. So I sort of live close to 2 of my brothers. And then a while ago, I want to say it was before I met my husband. So between 17 and 20 years ago, my parents moved from Salem to Arizona. My mom is deceased, but my father still lives down there. We're trying to get him to move up so he's closer to family, but he lives down outside of Tucson, Arizona, which is where we go every spring break to go see him. Because let me tell you, Arizona is a really nice place to visit in March. If anyone's going to Tucson and wants travel tips, let me know, because I have a long list of things you should do when you go to Tucson. Number 3, did your family have any special traditions? My family of origin, I can't think of anything. I honestly can't think of anything that we would call a tradition that I have carried forward into my family, or that my brothers have carried forward into their families. In my family now, we do the Yola Boca Flood, the book exchange. So we do that on Christmas Eve. And I do it on Christmas Eve because usually I get everyone books, and then I'm in an online book thing where someone will send me a book, because my family usually doesn't give me books. Or sometimes what my husband will do is go up to my To Be Read shelf and pull something off there. And I tell him to do this. Go up to my To Be Read shelf and pull something off there and wrap it up for me. But that is a big thing. I know that my children that's something they always talk about traditions that we do. So, and we have other things like my brother-in-law, my husband's brother, always comes for Halloween. That's something that's really important to my kids, that they see their uncle on Halloween. So yeah, as far as traditions, that's what we can come up with. The fourth question is, what was a family favorite meal growing up? So honestly, we're going to say spaghetti. So there's a story about this. There's mom spaghetti sauce. Because spaghetti, you can feed a lot of people. And I had, when you think about my brothers and then their families, it was a big bunch of people. And it's not that much more work to make spaghetti for 4 people than it is to make spaghetti for 16 people. So spaghetti was something that we would have a lot. And we would always, we always think of mom's spaghetti sauce, and the recipe that everyone has is mom's spaghetti recipe. But here's a little secret. It's not hers. It's mine. I asked my mom once for the recipe for her spaghetti, which tasted different every time she made it, because she would go to her fridge and see what was there. It was kind of like making soup. It was a way to get rid of things that were in the fridge. But she wrote down a recipe for me that made no sense. Like, I was like, what are you thinking here? So I kind of constructed something like that tasted like spaghetti that she might have made. And so when my siblings or their family members would contact me and say, do you have mom's spaghetti recipe? I'm like, here you go. So it's actually my spaghetti recipe, but that's okay. One of the things that I made sure that my father made sure to give me when my mom passed was her recipe box and a couple of her cookbooks. Her recipe box is a mess, and it's mostly aspirational recipes that she cut out, like meant to do and never did. But there are some family favorites in there. Most of her recipes came from the Betty Crocker cookbook, though. Okay. Do you have any special traditions associated with your favorite meals? Probably not. I would say that, I know that when my mom died, my brothers were there. I was not there. I had small kids and I wasn't able to leave. And also my mother had asked me, I had seen her like a month and a half before she died. She was in decline, and she had asked me not to come down again. She didn't want me to see her again after that. So I was not there when she died. I was at home, but like my nieces and their families, and we did this too. Like the day she died, we all made the spaghetti. So that's not really her spaghetti. It's actually mine. I'm willing to give her that one though. Okay. 6, where did you meet your spouse or partner? Interesting story. So the short answer is we were an eHarmony match. Here is the long answer. I was 32 when I met him, so I had several years of dating under my belt, and I had not always made the best dating choices. I was just out of one of those weird relationships where afterwards you were like, what was I even thinking? Like, I don't even know. I was not heartbroken. I was like, whoa, what just happened there? I'm like, why was I even with this person? I don't know. And I had, in the past, I had done a lot of internet dating because that's what you did in the early 2000s. I don't know if that's what you do now, but that's what you did then. And one of these matches was this person. It was a weird sort of thing where we tried to talk. It was one that my friend found for me. And we tried talking to each other, and it just sort of fell flat. It was on Yahoo Personals. But that had been a couple years before. So I was just out of this relationship, and I went to the grocery store. And I'm going to the grocery store, and there's this person standing, I kid you not, at the meat counter. And I was just like, like, I don't know. It was like, I felt compelled to talk to this person. So I did what any sane person would do, is I turned around and left the store. I just left. I was like, I can't deal with this. And then the next day I had no groceries still because I had turned around and left from the night before. So I went back to the grocery store and I saw him again, but I was smarter this time. I would take my cart, and then I would peek around the corner of the aisle. And if I saw him, I would kind of run past the aisle really quickly so I wouldn't run into him. This was weird. I am not that neurotic. I may be neurotic. I'm not that neurotic. It was just a very weird situation, and I was really kind of freaked out by it, how this reaction I had to this person. So then, and this is all kind of happening in a short amount of time, a friend of mine convinced me to do eHarmony. So I do eHarmony. You have to do this long questionnaire, and then they send you matches. And they sent me about, I would say, 8 matches of of those, I think 2 of them I had already been on dates with, and it wasn't a good match. It wasn't I mean, they weren't bad people, just there wasn't a match. And then like 5 of them were people that I knew in real life and didn't have any interest in dating. But there was this one that I was like, okay, well, this looks interesting. And I went into his profile and I started clicking through some of his photos, and I realized it was the guy that from like the Yahoo Personals several years before, and B, it was the guy from the grocery store. And I remember I stood up and I walked out of my bedroom, which was where my computer was at the time, and I said, what the F is that? And then, this is how my mind works. I mean, just remember the whole thing with the grocery store. So my mind works. I decided, I know what I'll do. I will go out with him, because then that will sort of exercise it, and then I can go to the grocery store in peace, because I don't want to run into him again at the grocery store. All I have to do is go on one date with him. It's not going to be a good date. We'll just get it out of our system, and then I can move on with my life. So I went out on one date with him. I went out to met him at Starbucks, and he talked for 3 hours. I was so shocked, because I always had, like, almost every first date, I always had to carry the conversation. I was just like, he is talking so much. Oh my gosh. I nicknamed him Sir Talks a Lot. And I remember I was telling my mom afterwards, like, he just talked and talked and talked. And my mom goes, well, I guess you won't be seeing him again. I'm like, no, I think I will. And I was like, what did I just say? What did I just say? But hey, anyway, the short answer to the story is, I can now go to the grocery store in peace now, because he's going to be at home with the kids. So yes, that's how I met my husband. Sorry, that was a long story. Okay, number 7. What was your first house or apartment like when you moved out of your childhood home? Well, that would be my college dorm, which I went to William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, and it was in DuPont, which was one of the newer dorms, but it was not air conditioned. Oh man, let me tell you, Augustin, Virginia, without air conditioning. I have a friend who she also graduated from William and Mary, although I met her here. She graduated 10 years before I did, and just like the other night, we were talking about, like, can you believe we lived through that? Living in a dorm without air conditioning. So yeah, there was that. After that, I think it was when I moved to Boston, and I lived it was like one of those kind of row houses that just looks like a wall. And then it had been turned into like 2 units, and we lived in the bottom unit and the owners lived in the top. So yeah, that was what that was like. Number 8, did your family take trips or go on vacation to a certain destination? Every summer, my mom was from North Dakota, and she grew up obviously North Dakota, and then she would spend summers in Minnesota. Now we're going to talk about Minnesota. And so her mother, who was still alive at the time, had the family lake cabin. So every summer we would do a road trip out to Minnesota to have our week at the lake. My father was a long haul truck driver, so sometimes he would drive his truck and my mom would drive the car, and I would like go between the two of them. Side note, that's when I first saw my first naked man, because I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8 in my dad's truck. So I'm sitting way up and I look down and there's 2 naked people in a convertible going right by us. And then I told my dad, and he pulled over and made my mom pull over, and I had to ride in the car after that. But anyway, we would go to Minnesota. Then there was like an inheritance issue, and it's a whole mess. I call them the troubles, that whole period of time. But then my one brother, who now lives on the East Coast, he was living in Chicago at the time, he bought a place on a lake near there. It's a different lake. And we've gone to see him. I've not gone since my kids were, so it's been 9 years since we've gone. We were planning to go, and then COVID happened. And then for a trip that long, if we're going to make it a road trip, my husband has to have more time off. So it's when he has his sabbatical. And so then we were thinking of going this summer, but it just isn't a good time for him to take time off work. So hopefully next summer, maybe next summer. I don't know. Maybe next summer we'll do it again. So yeah, we would go to Minnesota and spend our week on the lake, which was wonderful. I loved it. I always say I love Minnesota, but then my husband corrects me. He's like, you love Minnesota in July. I don't know if you'd love Minnesota in January. Probably a good point. Okay, question number 9. Are you still friends with any of your childhood friends? Yes, although not super close friends, mostly we communicate through Facebook. My oldest friend who grew up next door to me, she lives on the other side of the Portland metro area. And she's a pastor, Presbyterian pastor, and she spoke at my mom's funeral service. And then at the little thing we did where we interred her ashes, she did that service for us. But mostly I communicate with them on Facebook. The friends that I see really regularly now are usually like, I know through my daughter or through our church or something like that. I don't have any friends from when I was a child who live especially near to me. So that's one reason. But yeah, I do. I keep in touch with them. We just aren't physically close. We don't see each other very often. Okay. And number 10, do any events stand out to you that you experienced as a child? So this happened when I was 6, and it's a big event. I have a very clear memory of it because which is strange, but I think it's the only thing I remember from being 6. Was I even 6? I was 6. It was May 18th. In fact, I even know the day, May 18th, 1980. So now you know how old I am, ish. I would turn 7 that year. You can do the math. Yes, I have a big birthday coming up. It was May 18th, 1980. So if you know what date that was, you know what's the story I'm going to tell you. But my parents were painting their house that day, and they had chosen this very vibrant, I don't have a book that a color to really compare it, but it's a very vibrant kind of bright blue. Very bright colors were popular in the 80s. So this was the plan they were going to do, is paint the house bright blue. But they kept putting the paint on, and it was like not bright blue. It was this very kind of dusty, darker blue. And it wasn't at all the color they thought they were getting. And they kept painting like, what is going on here? And I remember we were getting so dirty. I just remember like I was so dirty that day and I couldn't figure out why. And the paint was weird and we're coughing and we couldn't figure out what was going on. That night, if we go in, we all took showers. We all had to take showers because we were just grimy and gross. Like I wasn't even working. I mean, I was like 6. I was out riding my bike and stuff while my parents, and I think one of my brothers was definitely there. And I think the neighbors were helping, but everybody was just gross. We were just like, ugh. And so we all came in, we all took showers and everything. And we sat down for dinner and we turned on the news because back then you got your evening news. You didn't, there were no alerts on your cell phone. And then we found out that Mount St. Helens had exploded. Erupted, I guess is the word. It had erupted. So that was all ash that we were covered in and coughing. And the interesting is that it got into the paint, which is why the paint was that color. The house is still that color. My father, they lived there for a very long time, never had to repaint that house. It is still like that color. And oh, thank God, because the bright blue would have been so horrible. So I do remember that event from being a child. Okay, so the only thing left is to tag. So I have 3 people that I am going to tag. I'm going to tag Zuzi. She's new to my YouTube viewing, so I would like to know more about her. Then I'm going to tag Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading. And then I will tag Angelia at Read and Reread. And if I didn't tag you, but you want to do this, please do it. You're tagged. Consider yourself tagged. Let me know so I can watch your video, and thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned a little bit more about me. I don't know, you might think I'm really weird after the story about meeting my husband, but whatever. Anyway, if you made it this far, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. Thank you.